Welcome to Happily Holistic. I'm Amy Lee Mercury, and I'm a medical intuitive with 20 years of experience. I've written 15 books on health and wellness. If you've had a medical intuitive session with me, you know that the thoughts and emotions within you, what has been passed down from your ancestors, and everything that surrounds you can impact your well-being. In this podcast, we touch on my favorite ways for you to improve your health and feel more joy. We dive deeply into everything health and wellness with a big dash of spirituality and a sprinkle of business. We spotlight the uplifting and the positive and share the secret ways top wellness authors and celebrities get inspired, stay healthy, and enjoy this beautiful life. I can't wait to get happily holistic with you today. Hello, and welcome to Happily Holistic. I'm so excited to have Nicole Jardim here with us today. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for having me. I cannot wait to get into this discussion.
I'm excited for us to chat. And did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You did.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, good job.
Yay.
Got a lot of hard
Nicole, yes, Nicole is the author of Fix Your Period, which I have right here, and I'm about to dive into. I'm very excited to do that. She's also a certified women's health coach, a writer, a speaker, a mentor. She's the creator of Fix Your Period, a series of programs that empower women to reclaim their hormone health using a method that combines evidence-based information with simplicity and sass. Fun, sassy.
I'm trying to make it fun.
Nicole has been called on as a women's health expert for sites such as The Guardian, Well and Good, Mind Body Green, and Healthline. Thank you so much for being here, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited to have you here and for us to talk about periods because there's no need for there to be a stigma. And I would love, from a feminist perspective, for all of us who have periods or had periods to get to talk about them openly as much as possible. So I'm excited that we get to do that.
Same here. I could not agree with you more. I never in a million years thought I would be doing this for a living, but here I am. And I've talked about them basically every day of my life for the last 10 years. And I'm all about everyone talking about their periods openly and not being weirded out by them.
Yes, I love that. And even as an entrepreneur everyone who works for me are women. I guess I have one person who is a man who works for us sometimes, but besides that, it's all women. And I love that we can create an atmosphere that can be harnessing the power of our cycle and also like understanding, when things are happening, and we can be flexible because of that. So, yeah. So, I want to start by asking you just to tell us what got you into this work, how this started for you.
Yeah, for sure. I had terrible teenage periods. That was basically the gist of it. And I know so many women can relate to this.
Yeah.
For me personally, I had no idea that there was anything wrong. My mom had terrible periods, in fact, worse than mine. So she just assumed this was all normal. And, that again, that's like the perpetuation of the generational problems with periods that, our mothers, their mothers didn't know that this was abnormal. And so as a result, for years, I had really heavy periods. Like I was scared to go to school when I had my period because being a teenager is hard enough as it is without leaks through your clothing.
Oh man,
right? It's so traumatizing. Like basically, I'm ready to leave the planet. Thank you very much. So I only had one accident at school, and it traumatized me. So that was an ongoing issue. I would stay home a lot because the pain was so bad. I would literally see stars from the amount of pain I experienced.
Wow.
And they were long. They went on for days and days. And we'll get into what's normal, what's not. But all of this felt normal because it didn't start out that way, but it just progressively got worse and worse. And I just assumed, based on my friends and what my mom said, that this was kind of my lot in life and I had to just deal with it. And finally, what started to happen was I would get these longer and longer cycles where suddenly it was 3 or 4 months and I hadn't gotten a period. And I thought, well, this is great because I don't want my
Wow.
period. And
Right.
finally my mom said, oh, okay, that didn't happen to me. Let's go to the doctor. And we went,
Find out.
and she just immediately prescribed the birth control pill. And I just thought,
That's what
my
they do.
period panacea. I am so happy right now. Because
Yeah,
of course I was like 18, 19, so ready to be done with these horrible periods.
exactly.
And it's exactly what happened. You know, I got lighter periods. They basically became way less painful. They were on time. They were not heavy. They were not any of those problems I was having.
Yeah.
And that went on for a few years. And then I started having all of these seemingly unrelated side effects. And that was where I was completely in the dark. I had no idea
Yeah.
what to do. I had chronic UTIs, chronic
Mm,
infections. My gut health was a disaster. My
I'm
hair was
sure.
falling out, skin issues, you know, you name it, like across the
Yes.
board. I was sort of the poster child, I suppose you could say,
Yeah,
for post pill or pill side effects.
exactly.
And that ended up being the impetus for me to finally get some help because I saw all these doctors. Nobody suggested that the pill could be the problem. You know, I'm
Wow.
sure so many can relate to this. And finally,
Yes.
I saw an acupuncturist, and he was my catalyst for all of the change that I needed to have happen in my life. And that was really where I started making diet and lifestyle changes. I got off the pill, and that changed
Hmm.
everything for me. So that was what put me on this trajectory. And that was
Yes.
like 18, 17 years ago. It was a long time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oftentimes it starts with ourselves. I've been a medical intuitive for 20 years, and some of that started with my own journey as well. And I will say, as a medical intuitive, uh, so many women coming in with so many side effects from, synthetic hormonal supplementation,
Mhm.
specifically the birth control pill, and probably one of the factors in our infertility crisis right now as well.
100%. I have seen it
Yeah.
so many times, and I feel like our bodies are so unique. This modern medicine, one size fits all approach,
Mm-hmm.
obviously is really problematic because
Mm-hmm.
bodies don't work the same for
Yes.
everybody. And so, of course, there are going to be a variety of side effects, and some people might feel fine, others will not. And I
Yes.
was one of those people. And I think it's so important for us to acknowledge that. And, you know, there's a lot of gaslighting in the medical field
Mm-hmm.
around our symptoms. Well, it doesn't show this in
Yeah.
the science, or
Right.
nobody else I've seen has this problem. And yet when
Mm-hmm.
you have it, that's what you're told. And you're
Yes.
on your way thinking, okay, is there something wrong with me? Am I imagining this? Is this in my head? So I really encourage everyone to honor that you are having the symptoms that you're having, and there's a reason for that, and your body is clearly communicating to you.
Absolutely. And our bodies do. And that's, as a medical intuitive, that's like basically what I help people do, is decode the message.
Yeah,
What
I
is the
love that.
body trying to tell you? Because it is.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I know we only have like our certain, 20, 30 minutes kind of time. So I want us to dive in and give our listeners some really great tips. And I was saying to Nicole before we started recording that I was excited to read her book, Fix Your Period. Here it is for anyone who's watching us on YouTube. You can see the cover, which is very pretty, and I enjoy the colors. It's a nice
Thanks.
cover. I know as writers, we don't really get to pick. You probably didn't have a lot of say in this, did you?
Oh, I fought hard for that. That was
You
a
fought for
big
it. I
challenge.
love it.
Yes, I know. They eventually
I love
relented.
it.
I got pretty much what I wanted, which worked out well. People were
I love
not
it.
not happy. There's a lot of
Yeah.
men making this decision, and they were clearly very uncomfortable with the subject matter.
Ha!
Thing. I know, but my editor worked with me on that one, and we got
Yes.
it, so it worked out well.
Yeah. So we were talking before, and I was saying I was excited to read the book because I had an interesting period last month. Although because of lots of natural and chemical-free, non-endocrine disrupting stuff I do, I don't have terribly bad periods. But anyway, so we can use me as an example, Nicole was saying, and then we can also kind of segue from there to maybe common problems or
Yeah,
common symptoms that people have. Does that sound good?
yeah, that
We do
sounds
that?
great. Hopefully, it's
Yeah.
great for everybody else too.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was wondering, like I was going to look in your book and try to track down, is why my period is, so the beginning of it this month and generally lately has been a nice bright red, which I feel like is good, like healthy blood. It definitely goes later into the darker because it's old blood. But it goes to tiny, like just a really tiny bit for a long time. Usually for me, that's 7 days tops. However, I noticed this month, even I knew I ovulated because of the discharge change and I started to feel it. And that was on, I think, day 12. And there was still the faintest tinge of a tiny bit of the brown. And I was like, wow, this went really long where it didn't have a set conclusion. So I was wondering what happens there hormonally, and because then I'll figure out what to do about it.
Oh,
So
for sure.
any thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really great question because it's an ongoing issue for a lot of people. I would say the first thing is, so you notice the brownish type of spotting post period for like 3 to 4 days,
Well,
or a few days?
no, so I had like my regular period that is heavier on day 1 and day 2, not crazy heavy, which I had in the past, but I used to be anemic and stuff. I've worked on all that. So it was pretty normal day 1, day 2, into day 3, it tapered. And as it tapers, it goes into that browner little bit. And that went on for then all the way to day 12. So that means that went on for 9 more days, but less and less and less and less. So on that last day, I mean, I would have considered my period over, but seeing the sticky discharge, it had a faint tinge of brown. And I was like, wow, there's still a tiny bit there. That's new.
Okay, that's
me,
new. And that only happened this one time?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Well, I think first of all, we should all give ourselves a little bit of grace because this pandemic has caused major period disruption. I've been calling them pandemic periods because literally I've heard everything. I've heard all the stories of, you know, my period has been longer, more painful, heavier, more disrupted. My PMS is out of control, things like that. And so that's one potential cause that just may be happening. The stress of it all. And it's good that you are noticing that you ovulated because that's, you know, one sign too, right? You want to be paying attention to ovulation happening consistently every cycle because ovulation is really how we make the bulk of our sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And those are critical not only for your period to work properly, but the rest of your body too. So that's the other thing. And then like what I think about when I see something like what you just described are a few things. So the first is the structural components. So our uterus is obviously sitting in our pelvic bowl. And what happens with the uterus sometimes if we are chronically wearing high heels or chronically sitting and not, you know, not moving our bodies the way we need to be moving them, there can be malposition. And so, yes, I know, right? Fun stuff. If you were to fall, did something happen?
My gynecologist told me my uterus was small and tilted.
Yes, I know. And a lot of people's are tilted. Oh, sorry, you're going to say something else?
And this month too, I broke out like way more than I usually don't. I mean, I've got makeup on still covering what's healing.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you noticed that
the androgens were extra.
Okay, so so there's the structural stuff. So we'll talk about that for a second. So the tilted uterus, you know, this is really common. What I find is that this can be addressed. There are multiple ways to do that. Oftentimes I refer people to a pelvic physical therapist. You can work with someone to be assessed to see what's going on there. I also am a big fan of visceral manipulation. And so really what that is like deep tissue manipulation, right? So you could see someone who does that. There's also something called Mercier therapy. So my friend Jennifer Mercier, she developed this therapy and she has a ton of training in this field and it was due to her endometriosis. And so it's like deep uterus manipulation. It's hardcore. It's not external, but it's amazing. I've actually had it done, and because I was experiencing what you were experiencing, this like brown spotting post period.
Really?
And I feel like it starts to happen more as you get into your late 30s, early 40s, and you know, hormones change. So I was like, let me just see if this is going to help. It's completely changed my period. Like my period blood.
I want to get it.
It's really interesting. I really think that everyone should look into this at some point or another, just because it can be really useful. So anyways, that's like the structural component. So everyone knows, like if your uterus is tilted back, it's just harder for those muscles to get the blood out. So it slows it
Oh,
down.
I see.
Yeah,
I
it slows it down.
see.
Hence the
I
reason you see
see.
the brown blood, right? Because blood
Because it
oxidizes as it
doesn't
moves
all
slower.
leave too.
Yes,
Okay.
at the same time. And so you might notice the tail end, or you might notice in the beginning of the next one, it's just from
Sometimes that,
the last period, that kind of thing too. But I find
that's
that,
good info.
yeah, I think it's really helpful for all of us to recognize that there are people who work on the structure of our
I
pelvic,
love that.
yeah, and
And
our pelvic function.
the gynecologist had told me too that if I wanted to have children, which actually I don't, that she would have to go in and tilt it back. She'd have to adjust it.
Well, you don't have to do that.
Luckily, I don't have to
Yeah,
do that.
I mean, if you wanted kids, even if you did want kids, you could go to someone who I've just described.
This
And
sounds
they would
better.
certainly, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Well, it hurts, trust me.
Yeah.
The Mercier therapy was hardcore.
It was. Okay.
But it is one of those things that you will see a remarkable difference. And then
Yeah.
this is for anyone really who feels like they have pelvic floor dysfunction or any kind of stagnation. So that's the next thing I find is that because we're sitting like in this bent position all day, I mean,
Yeah.
our uterus, our ovaries, everything is right down there, and they're just sort of squished in. So a lot of the time this can cut off like proper circulation. So this kind of pelvic massage or pelvic therapy can be super helpful for that as
For
well.
that too.
Back into the position where they're getting optimal blood, there's optimal blood flow. And Mayan abdominal massage therapy as well is another one that external massage that people do. And so I would say that the blood flow issue can be problematic as well. And of course, nutrients, certain nutrients play a role in, how our ovaries function. So it's sort of like a full body experience. As you could say, you've got to take a full body approach.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things I'm thinking about for the blood spotting that you're experiencing.
Thank you. I think I'm gonna look into that and get that manipulation done.
We'll be right back after this short break.
Hey there, it's Amy Lee Mercury. People have been asking what to expect when you book a medical intuitive session with me. Whether you have had a medical intuitive session before or are completely new to the idea, working with a medical intuitive may be right for you if you are looking to uncover the root cause of one or more mild to moderate health concerns. Working with me is not designed to take the place of seeing an integrative doctor or your chosen health practitioner. The way a session begins is you get to share your questions and concerns. After that, I say an opening invocation, which is adapted from something shared with me by my late medicine teacher about 25 years ago. It invites your highest vibrational spirit guides to participate in the session. These may be ancestors, angelic guides, or other benevolent non-physical beings. After the invocation, I let you know which guides want to talk with you and what they have to say. We address your questions and concerns and find resolutions and answers. If there are health issues, we find the root causes of the issues. To learn more about my medical intuitive work, check out the Work With Me page on amyleemercury.com. Especially, see, I'm really glad we talked about it, because even though that gynecologist had said that years ago, I really wouldn't have connected that with how this period went. And I think what it's showing me is maybe it's, it's shifted a little bit more. I do a lot of dance and stuff like that. So it maybe just got a little out of alignment there.
100%. That happens a lot with dance classes. In fact, the woman who I was working with in New Jersey, she was doing the Mercier therapy on me, and she was saying that the number one reason women come to her is because they take Zumba classes and all of these other classes, and their cores aren't strong enough, so they end up throwing out other muscles and causing problems structurally. So it makes a lot of sense, because I love dance classes.
I do too. And I would, and if I was this month too, now that I think about it, I was doing less weight training and took a little break from things because I was busy, and then went back to dance and noticed I didn't have as much core strength.
Oh, interesting. Look at
So
that.
it probably nudged it a little more in whatever this direction is. I think that's what that is.
Yeah.
She fixed my period.
In 10 minutes flat.
Yes. Who's
But
next?
Yeah.
I guess
No, seriously. Oh my gosh. Let's take a look.
Wow. That was not. Yeah, I feel like that resonates. I feel like that's what it is.
Okay.
Awesome. I need to find someone who does that.
Yes.
Yay.
Yeah.
So since we're recording and we're not live, if we were to now answer the questions of a couple of like the top people, imaginary clients that you have, like some of the top things that our audience might like to hear about.
Yeah.
What would they
Let's
be?
do that. Okay. So I would say, when I have a quiz on my website, because I feel like everyone loves a period quiz. And when we're talking about the more popular, I can't say popular because obviously they're not popular, they're not fun.
Yeah.
But the more common symptoms, I suppose you could say PMS and premenstrual syndrome, as well as period pain and heavy periods, basically top the list of the most common issues that women experience. And then in addition to that, I would say that missing or irregular cycles are definitely up there as well. So those are the things that I see more often than not.
I think so too. As far as from a medical intuitive perspective, I hear about all of that too. Can our listeners book? Do you work with clients privately as a coach? Correct?
Yes, I do. Well, I'm easing back into that after writing a book. Obviously you know this because you've written tons of books. When I looked up how many books you'd written, I was like, oh my goodness, how is this even possible? Because the first one just about killed me.
This is a thick book though. Some of these books are like considerably thinner, so remember that.
You wrote all of those. That is incredible. Truly, I'm in awe of you. And like I said, this one was so hard, but I will say that now that I'm coming back to life, I have a group coaching program as well as coaching.
So people can, because I think people are going to hear this and go, I want her to fix my period. She can. Just go do it.
Definitely help for sure.
Yeah. So let's say this: people who have heavy periods. I know I used to be that person, and some serious anemia, which I didn't realize what it was. But so for people who used to have heavy periods now, what would be? I know it's pretty general, so maybe see if you can break that down for us a little bit. Like, what would be some of the causes and the remedies and things they could start looking at?
For sure. I find with heavy periods, generally speaking, when you think about just the population as a whole, I would say that the number one cause is some kind of hormonal imbalance that's driven by lifestyle factors. So I just want everyone to remember your hormones don't exist in a vacuum. They are all interconnected. They're working with each other. They're communicating with each other via the endocrine glands, like your ovaries, your thyroid, your adrenals, all of these are talking to each other. And so when it comes to hormonal imbalances, there isn't just like one hormone that gets out of whack. It's going to be all of them, generally speaking, but you're going to notice these symptoms. And heavy periods, I feel like, is one of those really classic examples of a hormonal imbalance. Yet we're not really taught this. And so oftentimes what typically happens is the hormonal imbalance that I see is this estrogen dominant situation. Estrogen is dominant over its sister hormone, progesterone. And these two hormones, when they're out of balance, oftentimes you'll notice heavy periods. You'll notice long periods. You'll find that you have increasing PMS symptoms. You'll notice breast tenderness or breast pain, bloating, things, and mood changes, like I was saying with the PMS. So those are some of the symptoms, and then the heavy periods as well. And really what this means is, if you think about estrogen is just the hormone that is the builder hormone. It's building up your lining. And then the progesterone comes in and just sort of smooths it all out and stops what estrogen is doing. And so when we don't have enough progesterone, estrogen is just left to its own devices, and it just keeps on growing that lining. And then we run into major problems.
I see.
Yeah, so that's like one of the biggest issues that I find.
That's why the period's heavy. Additionally to all this other symptoms that are caused by it, the mood symptoms, the vasodilating headaches, plus it's still growing a thicker lining. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so this is why all these symptoms usually accompany a heavier period, not always. So that's the first more common reason. The other thing I want to highlight too is bleeding disorders like von Willebrand disease. So there are multiple bleeding disorders,
Yeah.
but what's really interesting is that they affect a significant portion of the population. And it's so important for us to look into that and to get proper testing. I actually had people on the podcast recently from the CDC and I think it's the National Bleeding Disorder Association, because they have a new project where they're trying to get awareness out there of this. Because if you've had a really heavy period from the get-go, from since you were 12, whenever you had your first period, and
Yes.
it continues to be that way, and you're struggling with anemia or other, symptoms like exhaustion, fatigue, then what you'll find is that you may have a bleeding disorder, and this is often not diagnosed until pregnancy or childbirth, when
Wow.
you might bleed extensively. So
Right.
really important to look into that if you've had bleeding that's heavy from the very beginning, and nothing really works, like lifestyle
Yes.
things don't work as well.
Yes.
The other thing I would say too is thyroid disease. So low
Yes.
thyroid function or hypothyroidism is a big player in heavy periods, because when we don't have enough thyroid hormone, we don't make enough progesterone, and then we don't have enough progesterone, we don't make enough thyroid hormone. So it's kind of a vicious
Yes.
cycle that we get stuck in. But also too, we actually need thyroid hormone to help with blood clotting and things like that. So there are multiple reasons why your thyroid plays a role in your heavy period. So that's another one to look into. And I feel like testing for thyroid is really challenging in the conventional medical
Yes.
world. Yes, you know this.
Yes.
And so I made sure to put more of the optimal or functional ranges in the thyroid chapter in my book, because I really feel like we need to get our test results, keep a copy of them, make sure that you have them on hand so you can really reference them against these more optimal ranges. So that's, those are the main reasons for heavy periods that I see often.
Those are great, great points. I think that will be incredibly helpful to our listeners who may have that happening.
Yes.
And
also, sorry, Amy, I was going to say too, really
yes.
quickly, endometriosis, adenomyosis, and fibroids also very much
Play a role.
driven by that estrogen dominance, but contributed to by other lifestyle factors as well, like chronic underlying inflammation, the thyroid issue, like I said, gut-related problems, liver detoxification issues. So those conditions too will certainly potentially contribute to the heavy period issues that people experience.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point. I've also noticed with thyroid function and thyroid testing, it's challenging too, because there are a lot of people who may be in like the low normal range, and really their optimal needs to just be a little bit higher, and they don't get the intervention that they need.
Yes, I know. It's so true. I know. We should talk about that. Like, the intervention is so challenging because we live in a society that has just perpetuated these menstrual cycle issues as being normal for so long. And so we just assume that these catastrophic periods that we have every month are totally normal. And I'm constantly saying to my followers and to the people in my community that we don't look at knee pain or ankle pain or whatever pain in our bodies as being normal. It's always reflective of something else deeper going on.
Yes.
Cannot look at uterine pain or something going on with your menstrual cycle as being completely normal and okay. It's 100% a barometer for your overall health and very much reflective of what's going on with your hormones in general.
It absolutely is. I agree with that tenfold. I really do. And we really have been I mean, think about the sort of, old colloquialism where people would call a period the curse. We've been raised that it's bad, it's taboo, it's gross, it's gonna hurt, and it's bad to be a woman. And for us to reclaim that, from a health perspective, and say, no, this isn't how it should be. We have the potential to feel good all month long and every month from a physical standpoint, and we're going to talk about this. And it's a superpower, it's a strength, because it amplifies our creativity and all of these other things that we can help shift the thinking around this in every echelon.
Amen to that. I could not agree with you more. I think about this often, and one of the ways I have women who come to me start to really discern why they feel the way they do about their periods is to ask them to tell their period story. Tell me
Yes.
what happened to you in
Yes.
puberty and when you got your first period, and
Yes.
was it traumatic for you? And have you had really terrible periods for, the majority of your
Yes.
life? How have you been traumatized by your period? So you've come to the point where you hate it, or you hated it from the very beginning. I had one
Yes.
woman tell me that she was 12 on a boat for a birthday party. She was in a white bikini, and
Oh,
yes, right. And there was
uh-huh.
no way she was getting back to shore. And she was like,
Yeah.
and I still shudder when I think about this, and I'm in my 30s. So we have to do
Yes,
work around this. Like we
we
might
do.
even need some therapy to figure out, why we're
Yes,
so traumatized by our periods. And talking about it
absolutely.
really helps a lot. And talking with people who you trust is
Yes,
so critical, because these negative symptoms that you experience then and possibly continue to experience today are really important to address, because otherwise it's going to
they
be
are.
harder to really fully feel like your period is okay.
Not only is it okay, it's a natural part of being, embodied in a female form. And
Yeah.
if we can embrace that and fully, integrate that in every aspect of our lives, it can actually be an advantage,
Yeah.
and we need to really bring that back around. I had a medical intuitive client many years ago who, her period story, I'm actually half Greek, and this young woman, or this woman, I guess she wasn't young anymore at that point, she was in her 30s, um, was 100% Greek. I've never heard of this tradition, but apparently in her family, she she got her period, or she got her moon time. She was at a friend's. The friend's mother was really awesome about it and like really positive. She got home, she went in the front door and told her mom. She was all excited, told her mom she got her period. Her mom slapped her across the face because it was a tradition to slap the
Oh,
person across the face. So then it was like, and her mom always called it a curse, all this stuff. So in that session, we did medical intuitive work around unraveling that. And that
wow.
alone fixed her periods, by the way.
That is incredible.
She
This is what
had
I'm saying.
crazy, horrible periods from day one. Just clearing that, working through that, and kind of unraveling the energy of almost like the curse that her mother called it,
Yeah.
that fixed her periods.
See, this is
Even
why
that.
it's so nuanced, right? I think about this
It
all the
is.
time, where we are constantly prescribed the Mirena IUD for our period
Oh,
pains or our heavy periods,
yes.
or we're prescribed the birth control
The
pill. I just
pill.
did a post on the Mirena today, and I'm just astounded every time by how many women are not looking deeper because they don't really know that they should look deeper,
They don't
and
know.
instead it's just brushed off. And
Yeah.
I keep talking about all of these underlying problems, and these are not things that go away when you decide to
No, they
get on
don't.
the Mirena or you go on the
No.
pill. Like, this stuff is brewing a complete storm, a
It's a health
hormonal storm.
crisis when they
Yes,
hit menopause and postmenopause. And it's
exactly.
a serious health
Yeah,
crisis that often, I'm going to venture to say, causes serious illness and or even death.
100% it does. That's the thing. Like
Yeah.
when we think about our periods, we never think about them, like I was saying, as them being reflective of our overall health. And in fact, there was just a study, I quoted it in my book because I felt like it was so profound, and it showed that women with chronically irregular periods throughout their life cycle have a higher risk of death. And it's
Yes.
because they're not ovulating consistently, they're not producing all of the estrogen and progesterone that are
Yes.
super
Hormonal
protective
imbalance.
of their health overall, their bone health, their
Yes.
heart health, their skin, their hair, their nails,
Yes.
their brain function. So
Yes.
when we think about the really ongoing impact of consistent ovulatory cycles, and then we're living in a society that is just constantly like, let's just turn all that off. It's
Exactly.
such a dichotomy. We really are caught and confused because our doctors are
Yes.
telling us one thing, which I understand. Like,
Yes.
I get this is the way it's been, people have been trained, but it's,
They've
I
been
think
trained. They
medical
haven't had
bias.
other training. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I
it
think
is.
medical bias just plays a huge role. It's like, oh,
It
women's bodies
does.
are too complicated. They're way too mysterious. Let's just not even deal with them. Let's shut
There's a
this off.
medium-sized problem, so let's give this woman a hysterectomy. By the way,
Right?
that's the other thing I hear a lot of.
Oh my
And
gosh,
I'm like,
all
oh,
the
I
time.
wish that there was another way, or people advocating for something different, but they don't know,
No, they don't.
unfortunately.
And
So
that's
hopefully,
where we're here.
yeah, hopefully at least we can bring that forward. I and certain extreme cases, there's a case for a synthetic hormone replacement, but really
Yes.
from my perspective, that is the absolute last resort, because I hear about all of the havoc it wreaks, whether it's, synthetic birth control, that Mirena IUD, absolutely, that releases hormones, or even, the synthetic thyroid hormone replacement. Instead, there are, natural desiccated pig thyroid options that can be used that cause less problems as well.
Yeah.
So across the board, just hopefully we can inspire women to look deeper and advocate for themselves, and to find those integrative and functional medicine physicians, to talk to people like Nicole or me. We do different things, obviously, but to look for other answers, and don't just, blindly respond to what seems like a semi-authority figure from a doctor, because they absolutely, 99.999% of the time have our best interest at heart, but they just aren't trained in all of these things in medical school. So we have to go deeper and look elsewhere and advocate for our own health.
Yeah. Oh, amen to that. I could not agree with you more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nicole, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad we got to chat. We need to have you back on maybe we can have you back on at some point and have our listeners send in their questions, and then you can fix their periods.
That would be so awesome. I feel like we could literally talk about this all day long, because
we really could.
So many different problems that women experience. So absolutely, I would be thrilled to come back.
I'm excited for our listeners to read your book and listen to your podcast. I'm going to listen to your podcast too, actually, because I'm very interested in this stuff anyways. And I'm sure I'll pick up lots of amazing tips. So thank you so much for being here. Where can our listeners find you?
So you can all find me on my website. It's nicolejardim.com. I have tons of articles on there on all of these topics. I'm also on Instagram, just Nicole M. Jardim. And you can also find my podcast. It's The Period Party, pretty much wherever podcasts are played.
The Period Party.
I know.
I love that.
I try to keep this stuff light.
I love that.
It's always so serious.
Yes.
Yes. So those are the places you can find me. And then my book is on fixyourperiod.com. There's a bunch of bonuses that go with it. So
that's nice.
Yeah.
Yay.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, thank you for being here, Nicole.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you all for listening to Happily Holistic. We wish you a joyful day. Thanks for listening to Happily Holistic with me, Amy Lee Mercury. You can find out more about the show on amyleemercury.com on the podcast page. Please stop by your favorite social platform and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear how you liked today's show and what topics you'd like me to cover in the future. Come find me on Instagram and Facebook at amyleemercury.com. If you would like to see what a medical intuitive session with me is all about, hop on over to the Work With Me page on amyleemercury.com. Until next time, stay happily holistic.